I never thought one sentence could change my life. But it did. She looked me straight in the eyes, calm as ever, and said, "You can come home, but only if you obey, and you better be wearing heels." At first, I thought she was joking. But Vanessa didn't blink. I laughed nervously, waiting for her to crack a smile. She didn't. I tried to argue, tried to explain how ridiculous it sounded. That's when she turned, walked back into our house, and shut the door behind her gently. Like she wasn't angry anymore. Like her mind was made up. And I was left standing there on the porch, alone, replaying what led to that moment. It wasn't just one fight. It was a dozen small ones. It wasn't just what I did. It was what I failed to notice. What I ignored. She always said I was too rigid, too cold, too obsessed with being the man in every situation. But this was something else. I slept in my car that night, thinking the cold would snap some sense into both of us. But it didn't. The next morning I checked my phone. One message. Not, "I miss you." Not, "Let's talk." Just, "When you're ready to walk in my shoes, you can walk through that door." It wasn't metaphorical. I knew what she meant. Literally her shoes. And she had plenty. Sandals. Pumps. Heels in every shade of feminine defiance. I stared at the screen for over an hour. Then I drove to a motel. I didn't go to work. I didn't answer texts. I just sat on the bed, trying to make sense of what she was asking or why. And somehow, the silence made it worse. 3 days passed before I cracked. I drove to the mall. Not the one near work. I couldn't risk being seen. I went to the next town over. My hands are sweating as I walked into the shoe store. A young woman with bright lipstick greeted me. "Can I help you find something?" I cleared my throat. "Yeah. I need a gift for my wife." She smiled. "Shoe size?" I hesitated. 8.5. My size. She nodded, showing me a row of heels. Red. Black. Beige. Nude. Patent leather. "What's the occasion?" she asked. "Punishment," I said under my breath. She laughed, thinking I was joking. I picked a pair. Black. Modest heel. Nothing flashy. They came in a pink box with gold trim. She offered a gift bag. I refused. Back at the motel, I stared at the shoes on the bed. I don't know what I expected to feel. Shame? Maybe. Curiosity? Possibly. But what I felt most was fear. Not of the shoes. Of what they meant. That night, I stood in front of the mirror in my motel room. The overhead light buzzed faintly. I removed my socks, rolled up my jeans, and slipped my foot into the first heel. It fit. Then the second. And I stood. Wobbly. Uncertain. Like a baby deer. The pressure on my toes. The tilt of my hips. My entire posture shifted. My balance was off. I walked or tried to back and forth across the old carpet. Each step a strange combination of pain and something else. Focus. Humility. A loss of control. And maybe something like surrender. I slept in them that night. Not because I had to. Because part of me wondered if that's what she meant. The next morning I drove back to our house. Still wearing them. I took the long way, hoping no one would see me at stoplights. My heart raced the closer I got. My hands gripped the steering wheel like I was about to commit a crime. When I parked in the driveway, Vanessa was already outside. Not waiting. Just watering the plants. She glanced at my feet before she looked at my face. A long silence. Then she said, "Now we can talk," and turned toward the door. I followed, one shaky step at a time. She didn't say a word until we were inside. Then she looked down again at my feet. I stood awkwardly in the living room, still in the same black heels, my jeans cuffed, my pride hanging by a thread. "I thought you'd never do it," she said, folding her arms. "I almost didn't. And yet here you are." I looked around. Nothing had changed. The house still smelled like fresh linen. Her mug was on the counter, the one that said "Good girls don't beg, they obey." Vanessa leaned against the table. "Do you want to explain why you're really here?" "Because I'm tired of sleeping in my car." She tilted her head. "That's not an answer. That's an excuse." I looked down at my feet. I'm here because I don't want to lose you. She nodded slowly. That's better. She walked toward me calm, deliberate. I held my breath. She circled me once. Then again. Like a queen inspecting her knight. These aren't just shoes, you know, she said. I swallowed. I'm starting to realize that. They change how you stand, how you walk, how you carry yourself. They take away control, shift your center, make you feel the wear. That's one word for it. She smiled faintly. Pain, posture, poise. That's what heels teach. And those are 3 things you've never really learned. My face flushed. You're making a point. I'm making a rule, she said, stepping back. You'll stay here. But from now on, when you're in this house, it's heels. Always. I blinked. Always. Every minute you're under this roof. That's extreme. No, she said, eyes locked on mine. What was extreme was how you treated me for the last 2 years. The dismissiveness. The pride. The way you rolled your eyes when I wore heels around the house like I was performing. I didn't know what to say. She kept going. This isn't punishment, Jack. This is perspective. You want to come home? Then you're going to do it walking the way I did. Day in, day out. No exceptions. I hesitated. What about when we sleep? You can take them off. But only then. And when I go out? She smirked. If you're brave enough. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. This wasn't about clothes. It never was. It was about power. And surrender. She moved closer again. If you want to leave, leave. But if you stay, then every step you take in this house, you take on my terms. The silence between us felt endless. Then I nodded. I'll stay. Good, she said. Then we'll start with something small. She turned, opened the hallway closet, and pulled out a small box. When she placed it in my hands, I hesitated. What is it? She raised an eyebrow. You'll find out after dinner. In heels, of course. I sat down at the table that night, still wearing them. Legs crossed, awkwardly. The pressure building in the balls of my feet. Dinner was quiet. Intimate. She didn't mock me. She didn't gloat. She just observed. And that was somehow worse. After we ate, she said, go on, open the box. I unwrapped the lid. Inside was a bottle of pink nail polish. And a matching lipstick. She folded her arms. You're home now. Time to start looking like you belong here. I held the polish in my hand. It trembled slightly, but I didn't put it down. Because deep down I knew what was coming next, and part of me didn't want to stop it. I stared at the bottle of nail polish. Vanessa stood there, arms crossed, not pressuring me, but not giving me a way out either. So, she said, are you going to follow the rule? I swallowed. You never said anything about this. You assumed the rule ended at your feet. It doesn't. She walked to the bathroom, opened the door, and flicked on the light. Sit, she said. I moved without thinking. The heels clicked softly against the hardwood floor. A sound I was beginning to recognize. A sound that had started to make me careful. She pulled out a small vanity chair and patted it. I sat down. She tied a towel around my shoulders, just like she'd done to herself 100 times before, back when I used to watch her doing her makeup from the doorway, barely noticing. Back when I had no idea how much time and effort it really took. She unscrewed the cap of the nail polish. Held up my hand. I'm not asking, she said. This is part of the walk now. I let her take my fingers. And just like that, the first coat went on. The color was lighter than I expected. Almost soft. But it popped against my skin, not in a ridiculous way, but in a way that made my hand quieter. More delicate. She worked in silence. Methodical. Focused. Each brushstroke slowed my breath. Then came the lipstick. I tried to hold my lips steady. Failed. Her touch was light but firm. Relax your mouth. I obeyed. When she was done, she spun the mirror toward me. I stared at my reflection. Still Jack, but softer. The heels were on. My toes still sore. My legs still stiff. But something was happening in the mirror. My face wasn't feminine, not truly. But it wasn't his either. Not the Jack who slammed doors. Not the Jack who rolled his eyes at her outfits or mocked the time she spent getting ready. This version was somewhere in between. Uncertain. Exposed. Quiet. Say something, she said. I didn't know how. So I just looked up at her. Why are you doing this? I asked softly. Vanessa knelt beside me. Her voice lost its edge. Because you always had power, without ever understanding what it felt like to not have it. This isn't revenge, Jack. This is revelation. I blinked. She stood again and gently pressed her fingers to my chin. You want to walk in my heels? She asked. I nodded. Then do it all the way. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my feet, toes painted, lips slightly smudged, still in heels. And I didn't take them off, not even when I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up still in heels. My feet throbbed, but I didn't take them off. Vanessa noticed. She placed a cup of coffee in front of me and simply said, Good. We ate in silence. The air between us was strange, not tense, not soft either. More like alert, like we were both waiting for something. After breakfast, she handed me a small envelope. I opened it. Inside was a list. Handwritten. Neat. Pick up dry cleaning. Buy almond milk. Return library books. Drop off shoes for repair. For errands. All easy. Except one thing. I looked up at her, wide-eyed. You want me to go out like this? She nodded. Calm. Certain. But what if someone sees me? Then they'll see you, she said. That's the point. I'm not ready. You don't get to decide when you're ready, she replied. You already agreed to the rule. Inside the house. She leaned forward. The world doesn't end at the front door. And neither does the lesson. I stared at the envelope. My chest tightened. This wasn't just about shoes anymore. This was about being seen. Vanessa stood and walked to the front closet. She opened it and pulled out a knee-length trench coat. She tossed it onto the couch beside me. Put that over what you're wearing. It'll help. A little. I hesitated for a long time, but I didn't say no. An hour later, I stood in the parking lot of the dry cleaner. Trench coat buttoned up. Heels beneath it, making my steps cautious. My face no foundation, just yesterday's light lipstick, smudged but still there. I felt exposed. I felt like a lie that had learned to breathe. I stood outside the glass door and tried to will myself invisible. Then I walked in. The bell over the door rang like an alarm. The woman behind the counter smiled politely. She didn't laugh. She didn't point. She just asked for my name. Jack Russell. She turned to the rack, pulled out a pair of slacks and a blazer, and handed them over. That'll be $12. My hand shook as I pulled out my card. She swiped it without a blink. Have a nice day, she said. I walked out stunned. That was it? No laughter? No humiliation? Just normal? It shook me more than if she'd said something cruel. Errand by errand, I moved through the list. Library. Grocery store. Shoe repair. No one stopped me. Some people looked, but more like curiosity than ridicule. By the time I got home, my calves were burning, and my hands were cold from clutching the steering wheel. Vanessa opened the door, took the bags from me, and placed them gently on the counter. Then she looked at me and said, You survived. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. I thought people would stare. They did, she said. But not the way you think. She placed her hand on mine. There's something powerful about a man who walks on unfamiliar ground and doesn't fall. I didn't say anything. But that night, when I took off the heels to sleep, I felt the absence of them more than the pain they'd left behind. I was still sore the next morning, not just in my feet, but in something deeper, like my pride had been walked on. And yet, I didn't take the heels off when I got out of bed. Vanessa noticed. She placed a small breakfast tray on the table. Poached eggs. Toast. Black coffee. A folded napkin, and a note. Today will hurt differently. Be brave. I looked up at her. She was already dressed. Calm. Composed. What does this mean? She took a sip of tea and simply said, We're having company. My stomach dropped. Who? She smiled faintly. You'll see. I tried to push for more. She wouldn't budge. She told me to shower, shave, and be ready in 1 hour. Wear the gray skirt, she added. And the powder blue blouse. You'll look thoughtful in that. My hands shook as I got dressed. It was the first time I'd worn a skirt. I kept checking the hem, adjusting the waistband, unsure of how it was supposed to sit. I didn't feel sexy. I didn't feel like a joke either. I just felt visible. When I walked out of the bedroom, Vanessa stood waiting. She gave me a small nod, then handed me a pair of nude pumps. New day, new height, she said. 3 inches. I sighed. You want me to fall, don't you? I want you to balance. I slipped them on and instantly felt the shift in my spine. I hated how much I already knew what to expect. She adjusted my blouse collar, applied a fresh layer of soft lip gloss to my mouth, smiled once. Don't forget to smile when they arrive, she whispered. The doorbell rang. My heart stopped. Vanessa opened it, and in walked Marcus, my coworker, my drinking buddy, the last person on earth I ever wanted to see me like this. He froze in the doorway, eyes locking on mine. At first he said nothing. Then, Jack. I tried to speak. My voice cracked. Hi, Marcus. He blinked, looked me over, then looked at Vanessa. She smiled politely. Coffee. He nodded, still stunned. The 3 of us sat down at the table. The sound of my heels tapping nervously against the floor filled the silence. I tried to avoid Marcus's eyes, but eventually he cleared his throat. So, this is new. Vanessa looked at me. You can explain if you want. I stared into my cup. This wasn't her idea, I finally said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Oh, no, I continued. It started as a rule, a consequence, but it's more than that now. He frowned. I don't get it. I know, I said. I didn't either, until I started listening. He shook his head slowly, trying to wrap his brain around the scene. Vanessa sipped her coffee. Marcus turned to her. And you're okay with this? She smiled. I'm not just okay with it. I demanded it. He chuckled, but it died quickly. I stood unsure why. I just needed to move. My heels clicked across the floor. I reached for the window blinds and stared out. And when I turned back, Marcus was staring at me differently. Not laughing. Not judging. Just seeing. I don't know what to say, he finally admitted. You don't have to say anything, I replied. Just don't pretend it didn't happen. He nodded, then stood up. Well, he said, it was good seeing you. Both of you. Vanessa walked him to the door. He paused there and looked back at me. Those heels, he said with a crooked smile. You walk better in them than I thought you would. And then he was gone. I sat down, breathing like I'd just run a mile. Vanessa placed her hand over mine. That, she said, was courage. I nodded slowly. But why does it feel like I just lost something I'll never get back? She whispered, because you're starting to understand how much of you was never really yours to begin with. That night, the house was quiet. Vanessa didn't say much after Marcus left. She just lit a candle in the hallway, turned down the lights, and told me to follow her. I thought she was going to lecture me. Instead, she opened the guest room door. Inside was a full-length mirror, framed in oak. The same one she used to model her dresses in before we'd go out. The one I used to ignore or mock. It was centered in the room like an altar. Sit, she said. A single chair waited. I hesitated. Why? Because you've looked at yourself all week through my eyes, she said. Now I want you to look at yourself through yours. I sat. The light from the hallway cast shadows across my legs. I could see the hem of the skirt, my freshly polished nails, the soft shimmer of lip gloss I'd reapplied without thinking earlier. I couldn't look directly into the mirror. She knelt beside me. I want you to tell me what you see. I stayed silent. Jack, she said gently. Say it. I swallowed. I see someone who's lost control. She nodded. What else? I see a man in a costume. Does it feel like one? I didn't answer. Because costumes don't make you cry when they fit too well, she whispered. That hit hard. I felt my throat tighten. I see a coward, I said, voice breaking. One who never really listened, who used strength as a mask. She looked into the mirror with me. I see a man who's beginning to understand what strength really is. I turned to her. Why are you doing this? Vanessa smiled faintly. Because you broke us, Jack. And you apologized with words. She leaned closer, voice firm but calm. But this, she said, brushing her hand lightly across my shoulder. This is action. This is a living apology. Every step, every stumble, every ounce of discomfort is you finally listening. Tears burned in my eyes. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A simple, silver hairpin. She handed it to me. Pull your hair back, she said. I don't know how. Then learn. I reached up with both hands, awkwardly twisting and tucking. She guided me silently. When I looked in the mirror again, I didn't see Jack anymore. Not fully. I saw someone softer. Someone quiet. Someone tired, but open. Someone who had been hiding under layers of should and must and man enough for too long. She pressed her forehead gently to mine. You're not becoming someone else, she whispered. You're finally letting go of who you never needed to be. I cried then. Not loudly, but deeply. The kind of cry you don't know your body's been saving for years. The next morning, the mirror was still in the guest room. I passed by it on my way to the kitchen and couldn't stop myself from glancing. The woman in the reflection was still unfamiliar. Not a woman, really not fully. But not the man I remembered either. Vanessa stood at the stove, barefoot, in one of her floral robes. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Tonight, you'll cook. I blinked. Me? She nodded. We're having someone over. My stomach sank. Not Marcus again. No, she said. Someone else. Someone who doesn't know you, but who will know this version of you, whoever you choose that to be. She turned off the burner, placed eggs onto a plate, and set it in front of me. I won't give you any more instructions. Not today. You've lived under my rule long enough. Now I want to see who you are when I'm not telling you who to be. I stared at her, stunned. You're letting go? She smiled slightly. Not letting go. Stepping back. And that terrified me more than any errand or outfit so far. Because now, I couldn't just follow. Now I had to decide. The day passed slowly. I spent the afternoon pacing in the living room, pulling recipe books off the shelf, texting Vanessa questions she ignored with a smile. At 4 p.m., I started cooking. Lemon garlic chicken, steamed asparagus, vanilla custard, comfort food. Not fancy, just warm. By 6 p.m., the house smelled like a memory I couldn't quite place. I wore a soft lilac dress. Simple, modest neckline, long sleeves. Vanessa hadn't picked it, I had. With heels, of course. That rule still stood. When the doorbell rang, I nearly jumped. Vanessa answered. In walked a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, confident posture, friendly eyes. This is Clara, Vanessa said. She's a friend from work. Clara smiled. You must be Anna? I blinked. Vanessa spoke up quickly. That's what we've been calling her around here. Clara didn't blink. She just extended a hand. Pleasure to meet you. I took it. My voice cracked. Likewise. We sat, we ate, we talked. Clara asked about the meal. I told her what I'd made. She asked what I did for work, and I answered carefully, describing my career in vague terms: administrative work, spreadsheets, oversight. Not entirely false. She never once asked me to explain myself. And for the first time, I stopped waiting to be exposed. After Clara left, Vanessa and I sat together in the quiet kitchen. She looked at me for a long time, then asked, "How did it feel?" I thought about it. And then I answered honestly. It felt like the first time I wasn't acting. She nodded slowly. You're starting to live inside the name, she whispered. I looked up. Anna? She smiled. It suits you. That night, long after the dishes were done and the lights were off, Vanessa knocked on the bedroom door. She entered without waiting. In her hands, a small wooden box. She sat beside me on the edge of the bed. The moonlight poured in through the blinds, casting long shadows on the floor. "I've been saving this," she said softly. "For the moment I thought you were ready." I didn't ask what it was. I didn't have to. She handed it to me. It was warm from her hands. The latch clicked open gently. Inside, a single key. Polished. Brass. Familiar. I looked at her, confused. She smiled faintly. "It's the key to your apartment." My breath caught. "But I thought you said I couldn't come back unless—" "I did," she interrupted. "And you did. You obeyed. You followed the rule." I felt something clench in my chest. "So, you're saying it's over?" "No," she said, shaking her head gently. "I'm saying the rule no longer holds you." I stared at the key. It felt heavier than it should have. "You're free to go," she whispered. "Or you're free to stay." I looked down at the skirt I wore, at the heels resting beside the bed, at the silver hairpin on the nightstand. "Will I still have to wear them?" She tilted her head. "That's not my decision anymore." A strange silence filled the room. It wasn't awkward. It was final. The kind of silence that only comes when a long road ends and a new one hasn't begun yet. I swallowed. "You gave me rules so I'd understand you," I said. "I gave you rules," she replied, "so you could meet yourself." The key sat between us, untouched. I looked at it for what felt like forever. Then I closed the lid, not ready to pick it up. "Not yet." She placed her hand on mine. Her eyes shimmered. "No matter what name you choose," she said softly, "I see you now." And, for the first time in my life, I believed her. I didn't sleep much that night. The box with the keys sat on the nightstand like a question mark that never blinked. By morning, Vanessa had already left for work. She'd left behind two things on the kitchen counter: a cup of coffee, and a note that said only, "Whatever you choose it with both feet." I stared at the note for a long time. Then I looked down. Heels. Always heels. Even now. Even with no one watching. I dressed slowly. Not out of obligation, but out of habit. I brushed my hair back and pinned it with care. I didn't rush my makeup. Just a little blush, a little gloss, a hint of mascara. I didn't recognize the routine anymore. It wasn't forced. It wasn't humiliating. It just was. The heels still hurt, but I welcomed it, like a whisper that said, "You're still learning." I picked up the box with the key, held it in my hands for what felt like hours. The door stood ahead of me. Closed. Quiet. Outside, the world waited. My old life. My old clothes. My old patterns. I stood in front of the door and reached out. Then I stopped. In the hallway mirror, I saw her. Not Jack. Not exactly Anna either. Just someone I didn't hate anymore. Someone I didn't want to hide. I held the key tighter, took a breath, and turned the knob. As the door creaked open, the screen faded to black. What do you think happened next? Did Anna leave or stay? Did she go back to her old life or start a brand new one? Tell us in the comments below. What would you have done? And if you want to know where Anna's journey leads next, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because the next chapter is one step away. In heels, of course.